The first task that I like to do in October to help set myself up for an incredible spring garden is to just assess my garden and take some notes on what went well, what didn't go so well, varieties that I want to grow more of or less of the following year. And to keep this simple, because I am not the best note taker and I don't tend to hold on to pieces of paper very well, I like to just go around my garden with my phone and do kind of a garden tour just for myself. And then after that, I try to narrow it down to 3 things that I really want to problem solve for the next year. So for me, I know one of those things is trying to get more flowers blooming earlier in the year. And then something happened with all of my squash and cucumbers this year. They all really didn't do very well. So I need to kind of research and problem solve around that. And that brings me to number 2, which is to get a soil test, especially if something went really wrong in your garden. For example, I recently had someone tell me that they've tried planting raspberries 2 times and both times the raspberries just died. So of course, rather than wasting any more money on raspberry plants, getting a soil test for that area is going to help you understand what exactly is going wrong. My guess in that case would be there's some kind of pH issue with the soil so that it is too alkaline for raspberries to pick up the nutrients that they need. And in the spring, everyone's getting a soil test, so if you send it in the fall, your results are more likely to get processed a little bit faster, and there are a lot of soil amendments that really benefit from being applied in the fall so that they've got plenty of time to break down and get into your soil. Number 3 is what I am calling smart garden cleanup. There seem to be 2 extremes of people, and one is super meticulous about cutting out dead plants, making sure that everything is very neat and tidy. Then there's the other side that have seen a meme or 2 perhaps that says don't clean up your garden at all because bugs are overwintering in your garden, and if you cut it all down then you're removing all of this shelter and food source for beneficial insects and animals. I think it is a good idea to clean up any areas that were really heavily affected by pests or diseases. For example, I really battle with squash bugs every year, and they are known to overwinter in mulch. So instead of just leaving the mulch there, I am going to compost that because I know that my compost pile is going to get hot enough for that. Number 4 is to set up or balance out your compost piles. And I think fall is the perfect time to do this because, at least in my garden, it is when I have the most equal ratio of browns and greens. I compost in these 3-foot by 3-foot bins. There are tons of methods out there for composting, but the general idea is just that by volume, you want to have a bucket of greens and a bucket of browns, layer them together, and then a lot of people also will take a handful of finished compost and toss that in with each layer. So to go browns, greens, compost, browns, greens, compost. It can also really help to kind of tear your materials up into smaller pieces. The more surface area, the faster your compost will decompose. Number 5 is to add organic matter to your garden. And this can be in the form of a layer of finished compost. It can be burying unfinished compost or adding wood chips to flower beds. It's really important to do this instead of only relying on fertilizers, because only organic matter has the power to feed the microbial activity in your soil, improve your soil structure, improve the ability of that soil to hold water, but it does take time for it to work. And if you apply it in the fall, then over winter and early spring, all those good microbes are going to get in there and start breaking it down into nutrients that are then available for your plants. Number 6 is to utilize cover crops, and one of the big reasons to do this is that nitrogen moves with water. So if you've got a compost pile that is exposed to the elements, it snows, it rains, as water moves through that, it is taking some of the nitrogen with it. When you use cover crops, it can keep that nitrogen in place and reduce the need for fertilizer. Number 7 is to protect your perennial plant's roots with a good layer of mulch. This is especially true if you've got something that is kind of on the edge of being good for your zone. I have asparagus, rhubarb, and a variety of perennial kale that I will be covering with a couple of inches of wood chips to make sure they are nice and cozy for the winter. And on a very similar note, number 8 is to overwinter some plants. There are a couple of peppers that I grow that take a really long time to produce, and I don't have that long of a growing season. So instead of just letting them die and starting from seed again next year, I'm going to cut them down to kind of a dormant stage, bring them inside for protection so those roots don't ever freeze. In the spring, I will take it back outside and it will start producing peppers again for me a lot faster than if I started again from seed. Number 9 is to think about ways to extend your season if you would like to. As long as you have enough sunlight, you can use things like cold frames or row cover to get a little bit more out of your garden. This can be really handy right about now, as a lot of us are kind of looking at our first frost in a couple of weeks, because what will happen a lot of the time is you get one kind of light frost that is going to kill everything, like your tomatoes and beans and that kind of thing, but then it'll warm up again for a few days. And if you can protect some of your plants that are just about ripe but not quite there through that one night, then you can extend your season by quite a bit. And that brings me to number 10, which is to sow some winter greens. Things like spinach and arugula do pretty well in cold temperatures with a little bit of protection, like one of those frost blankets. Number 11 is to plant garlic and shallots if you would like to as well. And rather than going by date, it can help to go by soil temperature. So you want to wait until your soil temperature is around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And while you're at it, don't forget to plant some flower bulbs, whether that is crocus, daffodil, or tulip bulbs, peony or iris roots. You can scatter a lot of seeds in the fall that will really benefit from the process of freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing. You will seriously thank yourself so much in February and March, when the rest of the world is so cold and dead feeling. When you've got some of these beautiful early flowers popping up, it just makes everything better. Number 13 is to clean and organize and possibly even sharpen your garden tools. For any tools that have developed rust, I am going to soak them in vinegar, then clean them off and oil them. And I didn't even know until this year that you can have your garden tools sharpened. Number 14 is to either winterize or bring indoors anything that can be damaged by continually freezing and thawing. I stopped using my drip irrigation system entirely at least 3 weeks in advance of my first frost, but just in case there is any water left, I will drain all of those hoses. I will bring in any nozzles, and I'll also bring in any of my terracotta pots, because over time those will degrade if they're left out in the elements. I saved my favorite for last, and that is number 15, go through your seed packets. I think at the end of the season you have a much clearer and realistic idea of what went well and what didn't go so well. So it's a really good time to edit your collection down and make sure that you're kind of ready with a little bit of a list to keep you focused when seed sales start again in January. I hope it's clear that this list is just ideas, not anything that you should feel pressure to do or that you even have to do. There have been years where I do most of these things and years where I do hardly anything at all, and a lot of them don't have to be done in October as well. You can do them pretty much any time throughout the fall and winter. But I hope you give some of these a try, set yourself up for an amazing spring garden, and if this has been helpful, please hit the like button so more people can see it, and I'll see you in the next one.